I was reading something yesterday that it's a good idea to bring a book to services for the high holidays. And the place I got this from, the Hartman Institute, actually gave a list of books that you might want to recommend to read during the services, during the slow parts. They're all Jewish-related books, that's important. And they said, however, you are not allowed to read books during the rabbi's sermon. That's why we have pictures in the back of the Chumashim. Anyway, I'm sure you've forgotten by now, but Donald Trump's speech at the Republican National Convention was 3,893 words and lasted for 92 minutes. Kamala Harris's speech at the Democratic Convention was 3,311 words and lasted for 40 minutes. My sermon this morning is 3,800 words. So, if you don't interrupt me with applause, I can be done in about a little less than 25 minutes. But if you must applaud and hold up signs and cheer and drop balloons, I will not stop you. We might be here till Yom Kippur, though, but that's your problem. Okay, thank you. Now, if this was a serialized television show, I would start with the following. Previously, on Rabbi Simon's Rosh Hashanah sermons, last year in 2023, I know you remember it well, I asked you, where will you stand when the flood comes? Who knew that a mere 3 weeks later, a flood of epic proportions, a tsunami bigger and more devastating than we've ever felt before, did indeed hit us, unleashing not only the destruction of entire communities in Israel, but the brutal murder of 1,200 innocent lives, the torture, rape, abuse, and kidnapping of our people, 101 of them still being held hostage, a daily barrage of rockets from Hezbollah that have forced the evacuation of tens and thousands from the north, the 200 ballistic missiles that attacked Israel from Iran just the other day, and of course, not to mention the surge of Jew hatred, let's call it what it really is, that we've seen all across the globe, including right here in the United States. Yes, the Golden Medina, especially on college campuses, but infiltrating all walks of life too, all aspects of our society, including politics, the media, and the arts. I am not going to stand here today to rehash the horrific details that we've experienced this past year. I'm sure you know what they are. But I am going to talk about what has been done and what needs to be done together, each and every one of us, to see to it that each of us is safe individually as Jews, that each of us has the unfettered right, free of harassment, intimidation, and violence, to be Jewish in public, to be a Zionist in public, to ensure that our Jewish communities are safe, and to ensure that we always stand with our brothers and sisters in Israel who face this daily onslaught from our enemies that truly threatens their way of life and very existence. At a minimum, that means that we cannot and must not allow political differences to divide us. We must certainly not let religious differences as Jews to divide us either. Rather, we must work together to support our faith, to support our free exercise of our religion, to support all Jewish people everywhere, and to support Israel and Zionism regardless of any of our differences. But I will begin again with this. How many of you remember or ever heard of Anthony Newley? He wrote a Broadway show called The Smell of the Grease Paint and the Roar of the Crowd. It was about actors, but it could have also been about rabbis too. Just substitute cholent for grease paint, and it's about giving a sermon. But anyway, there was a song in that show, that was made famous by another young man you might have heard of, a fellow Jew, by the way, named Sammy Davis Jr. How many of you remember him? I think he was Archie Bunker's favorite Jew. That song was entitled, "What Kind of Fool Am I?" And don't worry, I'm not going to sing it for you, and neither is Izzy or the cantor. But given our spirit of tshuva and repentance, maybe that is a good question to ask ourselves on Rosh Hashanah. What kind of fool am I to have wasted away my life this past year instead of doing God's work and becoming a better person? However, this year, the better question to ask is, what kind of Jew am I? And no, unlike Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, when Glinda the Good Witch asks if Dorothy's a good witch or a bad witch, the question is not whether you're a good Jew or a bad Jew. No. I want to know the following. Are you an October 6th Jew, an October 7th Jew, or an October 8th Jew? Allow me to tell you the difference. And hopefully, when I get to the end of the sermon, you will all agree on which type of Jew you really are or will be, not only this coming year, but for each and every year from now on. So let's start with October 6th Jews. What's an October 6th Jew? A Jew who on October 6th, 2023, just went about his or her business, disconnected from the Jewish community and disconnected from Israel. After all, none of it matters to me. I don't care about Israel. It's an apartheid, ethno-fascist colonial state. Anti-Semitism? Come on. It's only a few people. Doesn't affect me. Not in my community. Besides, I'm barely Jewish anyway. Anti-Semites will never target me. And then came October 7th. Yes, it was a wake-up call. But like the rest of the world, by the next day, you were already on to more important things in your life. Maybe you donated to an Israel cause or bought an Israel bond. Okay, you did your part. And yes, you keep seeing news about Israel and about Jew hatred. But again, it doesn't affect your day-to-day life. You can't worry about it because, after all, there's nothing you can do about it anyway. But maybe, hopefully, you're an October 8th Jew, a term that was coined by Bret Stephens in the New York Times. You understand what Israel is facing and what it needs. You see and are frightened by the rise in Jew hatred. You have been and you keep speaking out, supporting and taking action for Israel and for the Jewish people. And that is why I hope and trust that each one of you here today is that October 8th Jew. How? Here's a few examples. An October 8th Jew knows that Jew hatred is everywhere and is only growing, including right here in our own community. And let me just say this right now on the subject of anti-Semitism. An October 8th Jew knows that anti-Semitism exists on both the right and the left, both sides. And both sides need to be called to task for their comments and actions. It doesn't matter if you are Tucker Carlson or Rashida Tlaib or anyone else. If you are serious about fighting anti-Semitism, it must start by giving absolutely no room or space or voice to these bigots. They must be condemned, and anti-Semitism cannot be a political football. Don't accuse one side or the other of being anti-Semitic or coddling anti-Semites. They both do, and they both, for all their lip service, have not done enough to stop it. We must insist on a zero tolerance policy when it comes to anti-Semitism, whatever the source and whatever the method. We must let all our elected officials know that we expect them to speak out against anti-Semitism, enforce those laws that can combat such hate, and prosecute to the fullest extent of the law those who engage in that behavior. Period. Why is it that when those who defaced monuments and buildings in Washington, when Bibi Netanyahu spoke to Congress earlier this year and were arrested, they had the charges dropped? Why is it that Columbia students who took over Hamilton Hall and were either arrested or thrown out of school had those charges dropped and were allowed back on campus right afterwards? You know why. Because today, as we see over and over again in this multiculturally, politically correct world, the only minority, the only ethnic, national, or religious group that you can still insult and get away with are the Jews. And that must stop too. There must be consequences. Serious. Well, I said if you don't interrupt me by applause, but if you can. Serious and public consequences for Jew hatred. You engage in Jew hatred and you get caught, you pay the price. That is how we put an end to it. Full stop. You can applaud now. You keep this up, we're going to be here till next Rosh Hashanah. There's more. An October 8th Jew supports and defends Israel, learns the truth and shares that truth with others. We will not be swayed or dismayed by misleading, inaccurate, and anti-Israel media biases. And it is why we should take pride in and defend Israel's actions in targeting and killing Hamas and Hezbollah's leaders, entering Lebanon, and retaliating against Iran when it happens, and it will. Israel's actions saved lives, and not just Jewish lives. And Israel can never be a partisan political issue either. Jewish autonomy in our ancestral homeland is not a stance for either the right or the left. We support Israel because Zionism is integral to our identity as Jews, as well as to the entirety of Judaism. Don't let anybody tell you that it isn't. And that is why an October 8th Jew will call out anti-Zionism for what it is. It's an attempt to demonize and discredit Jews by employing the same false charges and lies and conspiracy theories we've seen throughout our history, only now cloaked in progressive or right-wing political rhetoric. Don't be deluded into thinking that anti-Zionism, never to be mistaken for legitimate criticism of Israeli government policy, is not a modern-day version of anti-Semitism. Like it or not, Israel and the Jewish people are intertwined, each of us paying the price when the other is attacked, each of us rising and falling with the other's successes and failures. If the world can get away with attacking Israel with impunity, then attacking Jews is only one step away. And history has shown that what starts out with an attack on the Jews escalates to attacks on others. As Alicia Wiesel wrote, American Jews who stood for their people across oceans now have to stand up for themselves. My father, Elie Wiesel, wrote a book about it called The Jews of Silence. He was referring to us, the American Jews who refused to speak up for their Jewish brethren across oceans and borders. And now, once again, too many of us have shamefully become the Jews of silence. We have spoken up for every cause but our own. But an October 8th Jew knows better. He or she is not afraid to be visibly Jewish. So let me share with you some examples. First, a lawyer in Connecticut writes, I would like to share a story about strength. I am Jewish, not very religious, and fiercely pro-Israel because it's who I am. But I also always think about how wearing my joint U.S.-Israel pin will impact my day-to-day work as a lawyer. I once had to pick jurors, which requires face-to-face conversations with them, where I practice in Connecticut. I agonized over the decision about whether to wear it. I knew that wearing it would risk alienating some jurors, but I decided to wear it loud and proud, and it worked out. I am proud of myself and feeling totally recharged. If you are facing tough decisions about whether to display your Judaism, I recommend that you do it. And we also take our inspiration and pride and hope in the future from these examples. In a public letter, 500 of Columbia's Jewish students declared that they would not be cowed by the haters, that they reject the attacks against their Jewish identity, and that Zionism is a part of their Jewish identity. They called out the anti-Semites for what they are. And then most remarkably, they all signed the letter with their full names, not being afraid to proudly and publicly identify as Jews on campus. And in the days since that letter was published, more and more Columbia students, Jewish students, added their names to that letter. Then there's Tessa Wexler. She was the first Shabbat observant student body president at the University of California at Santa Barbara. Since October 7th, she has been harassed, bullied, and threatened. Anti-Semitic students began a targeted campaign to impeach her, but she stood her ground and refused to step down for being a Jew. The impeachment motion failed. She wrote, "Standing up for Jewish human rights is not political. Being Jewish shouldn't be a safety hazard. Being Israeli shouldn't be a death sentence." The final straw was when the Multicultural Center displayed several signs targeting her. "You can run, but you can't hide, Tessa Wexler, and Zionists are not allowed," were some examples in the Multicultural Center. The college administration did, but Tessa fought back. No matter how much they tell Jews they can't be here, we absolutely deserve to be in the same space that non-Jews are. As a Jewish person, you should never live life in any way that an anti-Semite tells you to live it. They'll still find a reason to despise you, so maintain your position and role. And then there's Shabbos Kestenbaum. I love that name. Would you like to go through life with the name Shabbos? Not just on Shabbos, but every day. On Tuesday, good Shabbos, Shabbos. You might have heard of him, as he's been all over the news, speaking and testifying before Congress. Shabbos is suing Harvard for violating his civil rights as Jews. He has documented the anti-Semitism that he has faced and witnessed at Harvard, which again was ignored by a judge. Recently denied Harvard's attempt to throw out the case, ruling that Shabbos' claims were indeed valid, and Harvard has fostered an anti-Semitic environment. And since we're on this subject, let me tell you this. Although I'm sure you've been following what's been going on the college campuses, do not ignore or turn a blind eye to what's going on in the public schools, where the Palestinian narrative is taught and where Israel is really being literally wiped off the map. How many of you ever took any AP classes? Did they have AP classes when you were in school? Just asking. The AP World History curriculum teaches, get this, that Jews occupied Palestine during the Roman Empire. What will these students grow up thinking and believing in? Think about it. Jewish history, Jewish contributions to society, the reasons for Israel's existence, and why it's in America's interest to support her, are all gone or going to be gone. And that is why, as Bret Stephens also wrote, an October 8th Jew woke up to discover who our friends are not. And this is also why an October 8th Jew takes everything that has happened this year personally. We understand that the expression, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh, all Israel is responsible for each other, is not just words. It's a core belief. We are all in this together, all Jews everywhere in the world. An attack on Israel is an attack on us. An attack on any Jew in the world is an attack on every one of us. We feel it and we take it personally when we watch missiles raining down on Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, knowing that all Israelis had to remain in bomb shelters for their own safety. It is why we here at TBK have connected so personally with our brothers and sisters in Israel, inviting them to speak, hearing their stories, supporting them in ways large and small. We raised money to provide a barbecue and Shabbat dinner for over 600 IDF soldiers after learning how little they are given in rations. We have raised money through our Book of Remembrance to help rebuild Kibbutz Nirim after hearing from Adele Raymer, a survivor of October 7th, who inspired us and moved us to tears with her bravery and her resilience to rebuild our kibbutz. And it's personal here because a lot of us have family there. We know people who were personally affected. It's personal because Ann and Larry Katz's grandchildren were called up to fight in the IDF. It's personal because my son-in-law's cousins were taken hostage, but thank God they were released in November. It's personal because last week, when my daughter was speaking to her mother-in-law, who lives near Haifa, she could hear the rockets exploding in the background. And it's personal because on Tuesday, Liz shared with me a voice message from her niece stuck on a road in Jerusalem as missiles were flying overhead. And that is why an October 8th Jew makes Judaism a priority in his or her life, not only on the high holidays, but year-round. As I said in 2021, you all remember, be Jewish and do Jewish, not just today, but every day. Be proud in public with your Jewish identity. Nothing can be more important. And an October 8th Jew knows that we must live by the first line of the great sage Hillel's adage, Im ein ani li mi li. If I am not for myself, then who is? There's a reason why that line comes first. As this year has taught us, we need to take care of ourselves first, because nobody else is. Because before we can worry about others, we need to worry about ourselves. So be visible as a Jew, not invisible. Be Jewish, not just today, but every day. Speak out. Don't ignore what you see. Don't be apathetic, but be proud. This year we know that our Jewish future is in danger. Israel is in danger. The time for apathy and self-indulgence is over. Be a part of the Jewish community and a part of the synagogue, because together we are stronger. This is my 20th year here, my 20th high holidays. In my first Rosh Hashanah sermon back in 2005, I told the following story, and it rings as true today as it did then. The Dolphinarium on Tel Aviv's shoreline was one of the happening night spots for Israeli young people. On June 1st, 2001, a homicide bomber walked into the Dolphinarium on a busy Saturday evening and murdered 21 Israeli teenagers. The bomb blew the place to smithereens. Twisted metal and shattered lives were all left behind. The screams and the sirens ultimately fell silent. The hustle and bustle was replaced by a ghastly, ghostly silence. A young couple was supposed to get married there 2 days later. They went to the site of the bombed-out building to mourn not only the loss of life, but the loss of their happiness. Their plans would now have to be reworked. But some intrepid soul had been back to visit before they did. And next to the dolphinarium stood a simple, makeshift, cast iron memorial decked in wreaths which were put up by teenagers. There was a sign hanging on what was once the entrance to the collapsed building. There were words on that sign, and the words were a promise. The sign at the entrance to the dolphinarium in Tel Aviv has 3 Hebrew words on it. It reads, Lo nafsik lirkod. We shall not stop dancing. That young couple made a decision right then and there. They would not allow terrorists to disrupt their lives. They would not postpone the wedding. They would not change the location. They got married the next day, as scheduled, right where it was scheduled to be, in front of that destroyed building. The building might have been destroyed, but the spirit wasn't. Jewish lives might have been lost, but others moved on and grew. The world is filled with chaos, but out of the chaos, sometimes, if you look hard enough, you can find some goodness and hope. Yes, we are still terrorized by rockets falling from the sky. We don't know the full meaning of the losses we have endured. Our wounded are still before us. We don't know how long it will take to fully heal, but we know that that day will come. But in the meantime, we will continue to show the world what the Jewish spirit is all about. Enduring, sacred, and planted by a mighty God. Today, there's a documentary streaming on Paramount Plus. Andrea will give you our password if you want to watch it. About the Nova massacre. It's called, appropriately enough, We Will Dance Again. It tells the same story, the Jewish story of loss, but of survival, of bravery, of heroism, and of resiliency in the face of insurmountable tragedy. Lo nafsik lirkod. We will not stop dancing. It's a motto and testament to the Israeli and Jewish spirit, our resilience, our optimism, our strength, and our belief and faith in God. So remember the Dolphinarium, remember Nova, remember October 7th and what has come after. And most importantly, remember Kol Ad Balevav Pinima Nefesh Yehudi Homiyah. As long as our heart still beats, our Jewish soul still sings and dances. Lo nafsik lirkod. We will not stop dancing. They are a pledge and a promise and a way of life, all in one. They are words which hit at the core of our being. And at a time of terror and uncertainty, they are among the most inspiring words we can hear and take to heart. Lo nafsik lirkod. We will not stop dancing. And together, each and every one of us must and will do our part to ensure the happiness, freedom, safety, and security, not only for American Jews, but for all Jews throughout the world. And finally, October 7th was Shmini Atzeret. Shmini Atzeret is followed by Simchat Torah, last year on October 8th. An October 8th Jew is also a Simchat Torah Jew. So let us strive to make each and every day Simchat Torah through our faith in God and each other, our resilience as a people, our commitment to fight anti-Semitism and Jew hatred, our steadfast support of Israel, and let us never forget Let us never forget the overwhelming pride and joy we have in being Jewish, and not just the Oy. Am Yisrael, Chai v'Kayam. The people of Israel live and thrive. Shana Tova. Shana Tova. Gemar Chatima Tova. May our hostages be freed. May peace finally come. May you all have a happy, healthy, safe, and prosperous new year. And may we all be written and sealed in the book of life. Amen.
Amen.
Rabbi, we don't have signs or balloons, but Yasher Koach.